Hey everyone, thanks for joining Art is in Cakes, where we provide the tools and the knowledge to build your passion for baking. Currently we're in the process of setting up wedding cakes, and I thought you might like to see some of the process. Anyway, so I have my transport board and my grease-proof corrugated board sized to match my cake. I have my beautifully baked rounds that I'm going to work really hard not to break in the process of putting onto the cake board. This is important, especially in the larger tiers. You don't want to damage any of that structural integrity. Now for me, some people like a rind on their cake. I don't. I'm going to go ahead and level this off by just taking off small amounts of cake. I have my elbow locked to my rib cage. This helps me ensure that I am not digging down into the cake with my knife, that I'm literally just locking it in place and maintaining level. I teach this in my fundamentals of leveling and icing a cake. But I'm locked in, and I'm just doing a very gentle sawing motion while maintaining the position, same position of the knife as I turn my turntable. I let the turntable do most of the work for me, and I have shaved off a good portion of that rind. If you're not quite level, you can take a quick look and shave it off, but I actually create a well when I'm filling, so a lot of this is going to go away anyway. I'm really concerned more about the outside edges. When I cut through my cake, because I do tort it, meaning I have filling here, here, and in the next layer, I will place my knife in my hand and position my knuckles so that it's actually touching the plate below it. And that helps me keep the knife level instead of torquing as I cut through the cake. As I spin the turntable, I don't do any sawing. I let the turntable act as my knife cutting position, and I try really hard to keep my hands level and in the same position as I turn the turntable. You'll know when it releases, because all of a sudden it'll come free, and you'll be able to get your knife out the back side. When lifting these larger tiers, don't try to do it with your hands. Instead, use a transport board. You can see we've been using this one this afternoon. You slide that board right under the cake and then lift. This keeps the structural integrity intact. And like I said, I like to actually build a well. Some people like to put a dam of icing and then put their filling, but if you are using a heavyweight cake and you have lots of weight pressing down on this layer, what happens is it pushes down and that dam oozes out, and that creates those belly rolls. Have you seen those before? You've got this perfectly iced cake, you come back a couple of hours later and this belly roll comes out. So to prevent that, I give myself a little guide around the outside edge of my cake. And then I take my knife or my spatula, you can do this with a spoon too, and I take out a very thin layer of cake. This is really thin. A lot of people think I'm digging deep into this cake, but I'm not. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch. Put those cake scraps in something out of your way, and then just gently continue to do the same thing around the center of your cake. And you see, I am only taking out a very small amount of cake. If it's not level, it's really not going to matter, because we will be filling this up. This is when I take a moment to add my syrup. Some of us use flavored syrups. It adds another defined layer of flavor to the entire cake. And I happen to be using a little bit of limoncello. I'm going to focus some of that attention on the outside edges where that crust is. That's always the driest point on the cake. So a little bit of extra moisture will help that rehydrate. And then just a dribble for flavor. Remember, this is flavor. This is not to rehydrate the entire cake. If you have dry cake, go back to the oven and start again. I'm going to put some on the other tiers as we go too. Let's talk a little bit about filling. You could go right into buttercream filling right now. However, if you are using a slick filling, I like to put a little bit of buttercream on the bottom to allow a little layer of buttercream on the bottom will keep your looser fillings from seeping down into your cake. And it doesn't have to be very much. I'm going to start by putting just a smidge around the outside edge. Again, this is not a dam. This is a moisture barrier. And a little bit in the center. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. A lot of people want to fill this up, but we're not doing that. Taking my spatula and spreading that around. By spreading it super thin, I'm leaving plenty of room for my lemon curd, which is my filling choice of the day. But I'm also creating a moisture barrier to keep that lemon curd in place and to keep it from oozing through the cake. It can also keep it from feeling as though you have what's the best way to word this? Sometimes cake can feel wet. We don't want wet cake. We want tender, soft cake with the perfect amount of moisture content. If the loose filling absorbs down into the cake, when you cut into it, it's almost like you have water or a liquid in there, and we don't want that. So, got my beautiful lemon curd going in the middle. Notice that I'm not putting a ton of it in there. And I'm using my spatula to press down first and then spread to the outside edges. And I'm going to stop at the edge of that well. Why stop there? Well, this is a slick filling. If you go all the way to the outside edge, you may find as you're stacking cakes that your layers want to slide off. To prevent that, we're going to leave this little bit of buttercream on the edge as our glue. I am going to make sure I'm nice and level, but you'll notice we are even with the top edge of that well. That's how I get my cakes to look so crisp and so clean and smooth. Next step, slide this big guy back on. So I do have a little high spot and I do have a little low spot. I'm going to match those up, and I'm going to put the board as close to the cake as I can. I'm sliding that out. I did get a little bit of lemon curd there. No big deal. Scrape that off. Now's your opportunity to just gently, with full hands, press these layers closer together. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a marker for my well. A little bit too close to the edge. I do stay about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge. Too close to the edge and you risk having your crust fall off. And this is here for structural integrity. You're gonna hear me say that a lot. Structural integrity. Don't take off your sides. We want to keep that. It's nice and strong. Keep everything nice and tight and nice and tight and tidy. Say that a few times. I think it's an alliteration. So I'm taking out a little bit of the center. I am going to scrape here because I have missed the mark. I'm above the mark of my well, just in this area. Take out those extra crumbs. Give her a little spice of limoncello. Again, focus on the outside edges. We don't want a wet cake, we just want a tasty cake. I like to do fruit flavor, then a regular buttercream layer, and then fruit flavor again for my filling. So this center is getting lemon buttercream. Now I've filled in the middle. I'm going to focus on leveling and pressing out the last portion of the buttercream to the outside edges. Make sure you're nice and level in the center. Make sure you have enough glue on the outside edges to catch your next cake. All right. If you do have to pick up your whole cake, use both hands and lift, place away from you. Let it touch the cake underneath, away from you, and then gently place it to the front. Make sure you're on nice and straight. This one's a little trickier because there's nothing to rest your hand on. You're gonna lock your elbow, like literally, lock your elbow into your rib cage. Hold your knife in place. Don't move the knife, move the turntable. Do be careful of this thumb. Sometimes it gets a little close to the blade. When you meet up with your initial cut, you can move forward slightly with your knife so you're more centered. And I've already broken free, and voila, the knife comes out. I don't try to pick up these thinner layers. I will slide a transport board right through the middle and pick it up that way. A little extra chocolate cake. Same procedure. And you'll notice that I'm using the edge of my angle on my blade to create this first cut. And that gives me a nice line to follow. See this line? I know not to go any deeper than that. Remember, we're only taking out about 1/4 of an inch. Don't need to take out all of our cake. We worked really hard to bake this cake. Once you have that down to the level that you want, again, we're going to add that little flavor punch with our limoncello. We're not looking to make our cake wet. We just want to add flavor. And remember to do this after you've cut the well. It doesn't do any good if you put it on top and then cut it back out. All right, next up is our small amount of buttercream to create a moisture barrier to help keep our cake or our filling from basically sinking down into the middle of this. And I like to start right here on the top edge, just a small amount. And just so you can see, that is a super thin amount. And then starting here in the middle, spreading that into the crumb. All the way to the edge. And I like to come back and clean up this little crease area with the back of my angled spatula. And just remember, we don't want lemon curd in this area, because if we do, that tier is going to slide off when we add layers to it. We want just enough lemon curd to reach the level top edge of the well. I start in the center and I push slowly to the outside edge. I'm a little light on lemon curds. I'm going to add a little bit more. And in case you're curious about lemon curd, we have a video coming out very soon on how to make your own at home. It is my favorite lemon filling. I use it for cakes, cupcakes, tarts, meringues, nests. Anything I can put it in, donuts, oh yeah, eclairs, anything I can put it in. I like lemon curd. I love key lime curd. I also like orange and blood orange curd. Pretty much any citrus makes a beautiful curd. You can also mix in fresh fruits like blueberries into the middle of this, super tasty. Just looking here real quick to make sure I'm nice and level. I'm a little bit low right here. So I'm going to add a little bit more lemon curd into that little tiny space and we should be good to go. Right now, I'm just taking and resting the edge of my spatula on that buttercream to make sure I truly am level. All right, so I'm going to shimmy my cake at the edge of the board. Please don't try to pick this up. And I have a low spot here and a slightly high spot here. So I'm going to aim. You know what? I actually like this one better. Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Place it. And notice that I'm still up at an angle. Place it and begin sliding it off of your corrugated board. This is harder to do on a turntable. And then just gently get it back into perfect place. And now we're ready to do our first ice coat. When I ice a cake, I do prefer to use an icing bag, usually a 16 or 18 inch featherweight, nice and sturdy, and the Wilton icer tip is a must. This particular cake is getting beautiful fondant decorations on the outside, so I don't have to put anything more than a crumb coat. And this tip is going to help me get the perfect thickness all the way around. I fill my bag, place it, and begin squeezing. If you see it start to fold out like this, just take a moment to push it into place. And then reposition your tip so that it is more angled toward the cake. This fancy icer tip allows us to get through quite a few tiers super fast. Larger bags give us larger capacity, so fewer fill-ups. You'll notice I overlap the tip slightly. And I like to come up just above the edge of the cake on my third row, or fourth or fifth. And you can continue doing this all the way around, or you can just plop icing right in the middle and spread it out. Spatula. I'm going to start right here, right in the middle, and just spread that out without even necessarily turning the turntable. Just like that. And again, this is just a crumb coat, so I don't have to go into perfect detail, but I do like to scrape it so that it's nice and level. So this is my go-to. If I'm doing tall tiers, I will use an 8-inch acrylic scraper. Yeah, nice and messy. And I will reach around the cake, hold this tool at a perpendicular angle. The bottom is touching the bottom of the cardboard. So as I swing around, it should give me a nice tall level tier. If you find yourself in a point that's a little bit narrow or you need more icing, just get a little bit on the spatula and backfill slightly. Right here, there's a concave spot. I'm going to add a little bit of fill right in there so I can make a nice tight edge. Don't be afraid to steal from the top. One more time around, tool in place, give it a spin. I have one section that has a fairly decent shadow showing. Again, this is getting covered with fondant, but I will come back and put a little bit more icing right in that spot before I do. All of my tiers get a crumb coat start this way, then they go in the refrigerator for a quick chill. And then I pull them out and put their columns in. And once their columns are in place, I put a finish coat. And that finish coat will be the same for all tiers. Usually I end up using vanilla because it goes really well with all flavors. Some of these are lemon, some of these are chocolate, some of these are white chocolate. You certainly wouldn't want to put a lemon top coat on chocolate cake. Well, maybe you would, but I wouldn't. So I will take vanilla and do a finish coat on all of my tiers. And I do for two reasons. One, it gives me a chance to put a beautiful crisp edge on my tiers, and also so they photograph exactly the same color all the way down the stack. If it is white chocolate buttercream that's more yellow, vanilla bean, which is a little bit more tan, some of my others are more white, it's noticeable in the photographs. So to keep that from being noticeable, put a finish coat of one flavor. Again, usually I choose vanilla, and that will make all of your colors match. All right, so I'm going to put this in the fridge, get back to work, and I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching Artisan Cakes, and we'll talk to you next time.